Is it? Yes, now it has started, yes. Then we kindly ask you to mute your mics if you're not speaking. But all the time, feel free to write your questions, remark in the chat, and we will discuss and talk about it after both presentations from Pablo and Simon and from Kathrin, and then we have enough time to talk about your questions and remarks. We do have a French translation, a simultaneous translation, and please, for our French speakers, have a look in the chat, and there it is written exactly how you can use the chat and how you can listen to the French translation. We have done this already the last 2 times, and it was always very successful and people made good experience. So please, French speakers, do not hesitate to use this app from our translation office. All right, then I've done the introduction. And please let me now hand over to our Deputy Head of Program, Mr. Eric Thiele, who will give us some opening remarks. Please, Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stefan. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of our project director of the Agri-Business Facility for Africa, our project ABF, Mr. Magnus Smith, who cannot make it this afternoon, and in my own capacity as the team leader based here in Accra, Ghana, I would like to welcome everybody to this expert talk. You had seen it on the screen earlier when Pablo was projecting. The title of this expert talk is the Standards and Trade Development Facility, STDF. So I'll be mentioning STDF at some times. The importance of food safety to facilitate safe trade. According to the World Health Organization, about 600 million people fall ill each year due to contaminated food. I'm sure you or someone that you know have been victim of food poisoning, maybe from a hotel or a restaurant or just some street food. Additionally, we have observed a growing interest of consumers in product safety, environmental impact, and the well-being of workers. Many companies also have this topic very dear to them, and especially companies that operate canteens. They talk about food safety a lot. But we must all acknowledge that food safety is not just what we observe by getting food poisoning in the street or in a restaurant or in a hotel. Food safety actually begins on the farm. Being able to meet international food safety, animal and plant health standards clears the path to global and regional markets in food and agricultural products. For us, we see this as an opportunity actually to add value across supply chains and promote growth in more inclusive, in turn generating employment, increasing incomes, and securing people's livelihoods. STDF will be explained later by our dear presenters here, but actually it drives catalytic sanitary and phytosanitary improvements in development countries. STDF stimulates and influences sustainable improvement in SPS capacity through knowledge work and funding to develop, implement, and learn from innovative pilot projects. STDF also offers project grants. I think this will be good information for some of the attendants to this meeting. These project grants aim actually to improve food safety, animal and plant health capacity to comply with international SPS requirements. I am very much looking forward to learn from this expert talk today, because I'm far from being an expert on STDF, on food safety, and I know we have an expert here today. And I'm also very eager to learn about what STDF is doing to make food production and the food trade safer and more sustainable. Thank you very much. Back to you, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Eric, for your opening words and your very interesting introduction. So I will not lose much time, and I would like to hand over directly to you, Pablo, to you, Simon. Please feel free to share your screen, and the floor is yours, gentlemen.
Great. Thank you very much, Stefan and Eric, for those introductory remarks. I'm going to share my screen. And let me know once you've seen it, once you can see it. Is it okay? Yep, perfect. Okay, well, thanks a lot. So we thought we would first kind of give a short introduction, a PowerPoint slide deck about the STDF, just so everybody can kind of understand what we do, the origins of it, and some of the funding mechanisms, and then hopefully afterwards we can have an open discussion with questions and answers. So very quickly, we're going to be jumping back and forth, my colleague Simon Padilla and I, on this presentation. So just to begin, the STDF is a global partnership that helps developing countries improve their food safety, animal and plant health capacity in order to comply with SPS requirements. The STDF was established exactly 20 years ago, so we're turning 20 this year. And it was formed by the 5 partner organizations that appear on the screen here. So the FAO, World Bank, World Health Organization, what was formerly the OIE, now WOA, World Organization for Animal Health, and the WTO. We are actually, as was mentioned before, we're based at the World Trade Organization. And we're a small secretariat of about 10 staff members. The current STDF strategy, which is actually ending this year, it comprises 3 different work streams. So we have a global platform for general coordination and dialogue on SPS matters. We have a knowledge platform as well to identify and disseminate good practices in the SPS area. And lastly, we have a funding mechanism to develop and implement projects, SPS-related projects, and we'll be going into all 3 of these work streams. So just very quickly to describe the global platform. The global platform is kind of represented in the form of our STDF working group. So we meet twice a year, generally now, and we're having a working group in November, and then we have one in June of every year. And this is kind of where a lot of the coordination and discussion takes place. Usually our meetings are about 40+ experts, and it includes our donor representatives, the founding members, as I described before, and other partners, such as some examples like UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, CABI International, the African Union Commission is also usually represented, and we have members of the private sector who also come to our working group meetings. We also have to provide kind of a perspective from the developing countries. We have what we call developing country experts, which are 6 developing country experts that are designated for a term of usually 2 years, and they represent various different organizations and countries. We have 6 of them, 2 from each global region, so 2 from Latin America, Caribbean, 2 from Asia and the Pacific, and 2 from Africa. The 2 representatives, the 2 developing country representatives that we have right now are Martin Kimanya, who's a food safety expert from Tanzania, who has worked at the EAC, for instance, and Mary Lucy Oronje, who works with CABI. And like I said before, the STDF Secretariat, we're a small secretariat of only 10 staff members. Move to the next slide here. So on the knowledge work side, just to be very, very brief here, these are some of the topics. So the knowledge work is generally the working group gets together and decides on, where to focus efforts on perhaps, doing some research, some contracting and some consultants, and we choose a certain area to work on. So these are some of the past knowledge work areas that we've worked on in the past and are currently working on. For instance, we're currently developing a guide on how to develop, sustainable PPPs in the SPS space. We're also, dealing heavily with the, topics such as SPS certification, which we'll go into in a second, and other topics such as good regulatory practices. And just to give a very quick example of kind of some of the knowledge products that we develop, this is our good regulatory practice guide. This was a guide that was developed perhaps 1 or 2 years ago. And this is just kind of a practical guide to show, to explain what is good regulatory practices, and gives examples and provides examples of good regulatory practices, and such as stock taking, regulatory impact assessments, transparency. The idea is to use these good regulatory practices, for governments to actually develop and implement SPS measures that are fit for purpose. And then this is another topic, and I'll pass it on to Simon to.
Yes, thank you, Pablo, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So in terms of electronic SPS certification, this is something that we have been also working for a few years now in the STDF as part of this second work stream that Pablo mentioned, the knowledge work and the dissemination of good practices. So we started this work in 2015, when we were looking at how those SPS measure certification can contribute to facilitate trade, to facilitate safe trade. Because at the time the discussion was, it is possible to improve the implementation of those SPS measures, and to make it, and to make trade faster and quicker. And one of the results of this work was electronic certification came out as one of the facilitators of both, instead of speeding the trade, but also in terms of increasing health protection. So then we decided to start working a little bit more on that. And in 2016, the working group of the STDF approved this project, this ePhyto project. And I'm sure some of you have heard about this project, which is now one of the most successful projects funded by the STDF because of the global coverage and impact. But I will tell you more about this ePhyto project when we will look at the project work stream of the STDF. But in the area of eCert, we have working on electronic veterinary certification, so the other SPS electronic certification. We have done, and we have just started to work with one agency in Latin America and the Caribbean, AICA, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, and with the idea is to replicate what we are doing what we did in the phytosanitary field now in the veterinaries for the veterinary certificates. This has just been approved, so it was approved last year, and the project has just started this year. So I wouldn't be able to tell you much about that, but I will also give you some information. And we also put in place what is called the eCert Advisory Committee, which is basically a group of stakeholders that are interested in this theme, the electronic certification. So now this group that started with a smaller group or just agencies that were directly working on electronic certification, the IPPC Secretariat, but also WOHA, the World Animal Health Organization, also Codex, that were also developing guidelines on eCert. CITES, because they also have their own electronic certification system, and others, UNCFAC, UNECE. That now has expanded to include also some countries, the developing and developed countries that are interested in working in this area of electronic certification, private sector, and all other, a group of stakeholders working on that. So this is one of the practitioner groups that's how we call them in the STDF. So we have one for electronic certification, but we also have another practitioner group for PPPs, for example, that is the same. It's about stakeholders talking about the different work that they do in the area of public-private partnership, with a focus on SPS, of course. And the same, we have another practitioner group of prioritizing SPS investments. And these practitioner groups, they meet every couple of months, 3-4 times per year. And the idea is just to share experiences, knowledge on the different initiatives, different work, and try to build synergies and to build complementarities between all these different initiatives and work streams. So now we go to the final and the third work stream of the STDF, which I understand is also something that could be of interest to you, but is also of interest to us to see how we can join our efforts and collaborate with what you are doing and what we do, because the STDF is also a small funding mechanism, and I say small because it's very. We fund quite a small project. As Pablo said, the focus of this project should be on improving SPS capacity. So it's about helping developing countries to meet SPS requirements from importing countries in order to improve their market access. So this is basically the purpose of all these different projects that we have funded. And as I said before, we are a small mechanism, so we're only able to fund a small number of projects, and we would like to focus on something that is new, that is innovative, that is about identifying or developing good practices, that could be replicable, that could be collaborative. So we try to focus on some very specific cases, and then we look at how we can replicate those projects in other countries, in other areas. So we have, as you can see on this on your screen on the slide, we have two specific mechanisms in relation to funding opportunities. The first one is what we call the project preparation grants. And these are grants up to $50,000 that can be used for the three purposes that you see on the screen. The first one is to apply an evaluation or a capacity evaluation or a prioritization tool. So there are specific tools that have been developed by the IPPC, for example, the phytosanitary capacity evaluation tool. WOHA, they have the performance of veterinary services tool. WHO and FAO, they have their food safety capacity assessment tool. So STDF funds, these $50,000 can be used to the application of these tools, and also the prioritizing SPS needs. Then those 50,000 can also be used for assessing the feasibility of a specific idea, and we'll give you some examples of these different PPGs that we have funded until now. And the third one is about developing an SPS capacity building project proposal, which is the main objective of the PPG, which is the step before the project elaboration, and is given these countries. And for PPGs, we work in particular with least developed countries, countries that need more. They don't have the technical skills to develop a project proposal. So what we do here is we identify a good idea, and we provide that support to the countries to develop a project proposal. So the result of this first work, this project preparation grant, is a project proposal that can be then funded by the STDF or by other donors, because during the development of the proposal, we ask the expert, the consultant, the agency that is helping the country to develop a project proposal, to look at the different funding options and opportunities. So it could be something that comes back to the STDF for funding, or it could be also something that it mobilize also additional resources from other sources, that could be the development partners or also bilateral donors working in the field that could be interested in this specific work. As I said before, we're going to give you specific examples of PPGs and project grants, and those are grants up to $1 million US for a duration of 3 years maximum, but sometimes those projects are extended a little bit. So these are small investments, and as I said before, what we want is really something that is innovative. It is about identifying, developing, or sharing good practices. We always encourage also regional and global approaches, and also some ideas that could be replicable, collaborative, and to be able to scale up those ideas. These are that's the criteria that we use when we approve these project proposals, and we also give you some specific examples, concrete examples of projects. So these are PPGs examples, and I think I'll hand over to Pablo, because Pablo knows more about this, the first two the PPGs that we are going to present you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Simon. So yeah, just wanted to provide a couple quick examples of PPGs that we've funded in the past. As the title says, it's the main idea of a project preparation and grant is to prepare a project grant. However, we have other categories, and I just wanted to share a couple of examples. So one, there was these 4 countries approached us, primarily coordinated by South Africa, and they were interested in doing some type of a cost-benefit analysis, kind of a business plan. It was more like a feasibility study to see whether a ISO 17025 accredited laboratory could be established, in a mobile form. So as you can see here, this is an example in India, but to have actually a lorry truck or a van that could actually travel to closer to kind of where the farms are in rural areas in Eswatini, Lesotho, Namibia, for instance, and South Africa, and actually do some, food safety testing for export. So this was an interesting PPG. It's coming to an end, but a full feasibility study was done. It was determined that it is feasible. They've actually, through the project preparation grant, they developed some 3D models of how to set up this type of a van structure. And they, the consultants who worked on this traveled to several of the countries to see what the needs were, to see how to set up this system. So there is a full kind of business plan, and actually,
we cannot hear you, Pablo.
Pablo?
We cannot hear you.
We lost you a little bit. Pablo?
To have like a $500,000 US to actually set up a full mobile lab. Another one I just wanted to go through quickly as well. This was Tanzania, who was interested in setting up a cost-benefit analysis for a foot and mouth disease-free zone. And this was quite interesting because the cost of setting up a FMD-free zone is very, very expensive. I think they were looking at multi-million dollars project. So what we suggested is perhaps do a first cost-benefit analysis to see whether setting up an FMD-free zone would be cost-effective, whether there's sufficient export markets, because we know FMD is it's an endemic disease in Tanzania in wild game. So you would have to set up a full fencing system. In the end, what was determined, it wasn't cost-effective to set up an FMD-free zone. However, this cost-benefit analysis did come up with several recommendations on controlling FMD within Tanzania. So this is just an example. Again, a project grant did not come out of it, but ultimately it was a worthwhile endeavor just to do a cost-benefit analysis before investing a huge sum of money, just to see whether it's a worthwhile endeavor in terms of being able to trade, to export meat and meat products. And Simon, if you want to talk about the last PPG in Cameroon.
Yes, thank you. So the last one on your screen is really a more standard project preparation grant that focuses on a specific commodity, a specific value chain, specific sector in a country. And this one is about is in the cocoa sector. I understand this is one of the sectors in which, yeah, I mean, you have some preference. And basically, yeah, it's about there are some SPS issues that have been identified that are that are a problem for this country, for Cameroon, to export cocoa. So there have been some rejections of cocoa from Cameroon due to specific SPS problems. So and then basically the idea of this PPG is to help them first to identify what are the specific SPS problems, because they have some ideas about, I mean, maybe contamination of pesticide residues or ochratoxin, aflatoxins. These are the type of things that can be found in some of these commodities. And in those cases, the objective of the PPG is to look at the problem specifically and develop a project proposal that could then come back to the STDF, as I said before, or maybe be funded by another donor. So in this case, it focuses on the cocoa value chain. We look at the different areas, the cultivation, the post-harvest, and also pre-harvest practices, and trying to identify specific SPS issues and then propose a solution for those issues. So similar to this one that focuses on cocoa in Cameroon, we have worked on maize, for example, as well in Burkina Faso. That's another example of a PPG that resulted in a project proposal, and that project proposal was then it's implemented by us, and I will tell you more about that later. But this is basically the type of work that we do for project preparation grants. And as you can see on your screen, there are links to our website. On our website, we have all the documentation related to all the PPGs that have been approved until now by the STDF. So in case you want to know more about those specific PPGs or others, all the information is there, including the application form, the final project proposal that resulted from it, and sometimes other results of the PPGs. So now in terms of projects, I mentioned quickly this 1 million that is available from the STDF, but for project, we also request a contribution from the applicant, from the beneficiary. And this is in order to ensure ownership of the proposal. And for that, we use this list of the classification of the Development Assistance Committee list that is published by the OECD. And then, depending on the classification of the countries, as you can see on your screen, those beneficiaries have to contribute with a percentage of the amount requested from the STDF, but it could be an contribution. So it could be an in-kind or a financial contribution. And these are, as you see on your screen, for LDCs, we ask for at least 10% of what is requested for the STDF. For lower middle income countries, we ask for 20% of the STDF contribution. And for upper middle income countries, we are for 60% of the STDF contribution, which is much, much higher. So, and then as I indicated before, we also encourage regional projects. So if there is a regional project that includes at least one least developed country, is 10%. And if there is a regional project that does not include a least developed country, is 20%. So that means that upper middle income countries can also benefit from the STDF, and they don't have to contribute the 60% if they if they are part of a regional project. And then a few examples of projects. The first one is the ePhyto solution project that we funded from 2016 to 2020. As I said before, you probably heard about this project, but instead of explaining you what the project was about, because I understand that you might have heard about the ePhyto solution and the results. I can just briefly tell you why we decided to support this initiative. And the first one is because, the first point is because it was about the implementation of an international standard. So there is an international standard, ISPM 12, that focuses on electronic certification, phytosanitary certification, and specifically how to make that electronic. So it was about implementing the one international standard. The first one is, the second point is about reducing the need for bilateral agreements between countries, because this is what was happening before, and this is what is happening for example, now in the veterinary field, that countries that are more advanced, they are already developing, they have their own digitalization systems and initiatives, and they are already able to exchange data electronically. The second point that you see on your screen is that is also something that benefited all countries, all including developing countries, and in particular least developed countries. So it was really this generic system that was developed in the ePhyto solution was the part that was more interesting for the STDF, because it was to development of this web-based system that was available for all countries. Any country that is able that wants to develop to build those electronic certificates into exchange can do it through the GENS, the generic system. And then the third point, it was a collaborative effort, because the idea came from the IPPC and FAO, but during the implementation, many other organizations, institutions, countries, private sector participated, because it was really a very something that was very collaborative. If you want to know more about the ePhyto solution, I would encourage you to visit our website and to see all the reports there. But as I said before, it is one of the projects that has the most global reach in terms of STDF funded projects, because we know that now more than 130 countries are connected to the ePhyto hub, more than 90 countries are exchanging ePhytos, and more than 6 million ePhytos have been exchanged since inception. So it's really a big success. And now we are, as I said before, we are currently working on replicating the same structure, but for veterinary certificates. And that means certificates for products for animals and products of animal origin. So that those would have some veterinary requirements, but also some food safety requirements that sometimes are there in those certificates. So we look forward to what is happening there. It's just something that has just started, and we want to work with one region only, with Latin America. But of course, the idea is to replicate this work in other regions. And the next slide is about the project that I already mentioned earlier, Burkina Faso. Again, this is more a standard STDF project that focuses on one sector in one country, Burkina Faso, maize. And the problem for this commodity was the aflatoxin contamination. Burkina Faso was already exporting the maize to other countries in the region, through the World Food Program, for example, and other food systems and food security systems. And they were having some issues due to aflatoxin contamination. So the idea of this, it started with a PPG, so a project preparation grant. The project proposal was developed, and then there were some specific the project that focuses really on the adoption and dissemination of an integrated approach, because it combined biological control but also good practices to improve safety and commercial value of maize in the country. For projects, so we don't implement the project ourselves. So in the STDF we provide the funds, but those projects are implemented by an agency that is usually in the field, in the country. So for this one, we work with the EIF, the Enhanced Integrated Framework, National Implementation Unit. They were the ones implementing the project. The STDF contribution was a little bit more than $500,000 US. And it was a 3-year project, and the results are quite good, because this is a project that is completed now. more than 40 facilitators and 30 lab technicians were trained on aflatoxin contamination. There have been a 75% of reduction in maize contamination due to aflatoxin during these 3 years. And there is a 31% increase in maize exports from 2018 to 2021. So these are numbers that came out of the evaluation of the project that took place at the end of it. And there's also proof that there has been an increase in the average annual income of producers. The same for the PPGs. All the information about our project, including the reports and final report, evaluation reports, are available on our website. So I encourage you to visit them if you are interested. Pablo, now it's your turn for the other two projects.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Just very quickly, I won't go into too much detail. Just wanted to show a couple more examples of projects that we've funded in the past. Again, this was a project that came through a project preparation grant. So it's much easier for beneficiaries to put together an application for a project preparation grant. It's usually anywhere from a 5 to 10 page document. It's the requirements are a lot less in terms of coming up with a proposal versus a full project proposal. So again, these were stakeholders from the GI indication group. So just to give you a quick background, Penja pepper is kind of one of the most coveted white peppers or peppercorn varieties in the world. It's prized by Michelin star chefs and sold in specialty shops around the world. Penja pepper was the first protected geographical indication in sub-Saharan Africa. In 2013, it was registered, and later with the European Commission in 2022. So they have a protected status, a PGI, but they were having some issues with some contamination and some both phytosanitary issues and food safety issues in terms of exports. So again, stakeholders in Cameroon came together, applied for a project preparation grant, which a consultant was hired, an international consultant, went in, wrote a full proposal, and then the project was implemented by COLEAD, which is based in Brussels. I won't mention the results, but there's a lot of kind of knowledge work that came out of this, including a good SPS practices guide that was developed and is available both in English and French, and is currently being used. And since the project was completed, during this entire process, there were 0 rejections of Penja pepper in the EU market. So, Simon, if you want to just do the last few slides.
Yeah, and just to finish, I mean, in terms of our regional coverage, as you can see on your slide, now 45% of our projects and PPGs benefited Africa. We have our mandate, in our operational rules, we have to devote at least 40% of our resources to LDCs, but it's much more than that, the numbers that we currently have. But yeah, then there is a 25% benefit in Asia and Pacific, 22% Latin America and the Caribbean, and there is an 8% of our projects that are classified as global, such as the global e-phyto solution, for example. And then another thing is that we have to, in those in-kind or other contributions, we have been able to mobilize over 39 million of US dollars in financial resources from other sources. Then in terms of the sectoral coverage, I think, you can see there that 42% of our project focus on the food safety area, the stream of work. Then 28% plant health related, 9% only animal health. I think this is maybe because these are quite larger projects that are needed, and in terms of the value of an STDF project, which is only up to 1 million, maybe it's not sufficient to cover some of those big investments in the animal health sector. But it's also because we are a demand-driven mechanism, so we expect countries to come with specific problems and ideas, and then we can help. And then there is 21% that we call cross-cutting SPS, because they don't focus only on one sector, but this is animal health and food safety, plant health and food safety, or the three. So this is a slide with our donors' logos. So it's just to thank the contributions that we received from these donors. As Pablo said, we are a trust fund, and we receive the funds from these donors, and we channel it to our projects. And then the last slide is about what are the opportunities for collaboration with us. As we indicated earlier, we have those knowledge work that we produce, good practices, publication, videos, briefing notes that are available on our website. So we disseminate those good practices and the knowledge work that is produced by the STDF. How to apply for funding in terms of project preparation grant and project grants. All the information is on our website, including the application forms. But as I indicated earlier, we are a demand-driven system. So we expect the beneficiaries directly to identify their problems, their issues, and to come back to us for help. All the information about our projects, PPGs, is available on our website. It's important. This is something that we always highlight in our presentations, to consult regional, national stakeholders when you're thinking about a new idea. And we always encourage those consultations that should take place before the idea comes to the STDF working group. So encourage them to make that consultation at the national level, at the regional level, between all the different stakeholders, before submitting the idea to the STDF. And then you have the next deadline for application is March. It will be in March 2025, and then the following one in August 2025. We have a news stories on our website, and you can subscribe. And there is the link to our website and to the STDF Secretariat mailbox in case you have any question. But with that, we finish our part of the presentation, but I understand now the idea is to have a discussion with you. Thanks.
Yes, please, Pablo and Simon. Thanks very much for this very excellent presentation. And I think, you give very good insight into your work. And I think people who are listening to this expert talk really see that it's worth to have a look at the STDF webpage, and there are great funding opportunities for food safety projects, for livestock projects, for other projects. So this was really excellent. And of course, I want to mention to all people who are in this call, you will get the recording, the YouTube video of this call, of this expert talk later on. And of course, you get the presentation of the two gentlemen also later on. Before we come to our colleague, Kathrin Cordes, I would encourage you once again to ask questions, put remarks, whatever you want in the chat so that we can discuss it afterwards. So, ladies and gentlemen, everything which comes to your mind concerning the presentation of Pablo and Simon, do not hesitate to write it in our chat. All right, before we come to our discussion, let me ask Kathrin Cordes. Kathrin Cordes, she's advisor in the sector project agriculture, and she's responsible from GIZ for STDF. So, Kathrin, please, would you give us an insight? What is the role and what is the interest of Germany and GIZ within STDF? Kathrin, please, the floor is yours, and you are mostly welcome to share your screen with us.
Yes, thank you, Stefan. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Yes, for the sign. Yes, I don't want to take too much of the remaining time, but I want to share a little bit about what the German engagement and involvement in STDF is, and maybe to emphasize, like Pablo and Simon already did, where there might be entry point and synergies for you in the GIZ projects. I only have a few slides, but let me nevertheless start with a more general one. So what's the interest of Germany when it comes to STDF? The general interest comes from Germany as a member of the World Trade Organization and its ministerial conferences, because STDF is an outcome of one of the ministerial conferences in the late 1990s, early years 2000. And it was the outcome, a decision where the members said, okay, we have to support developing countries to meet international standard when it comes to food safety and to international trade in food products. And Germany was one of the members who voted to set up a facility like STDF, and Germany still stands to its words. So the interest of the country is to support partners worldwide, and especially in developing countries, to comply with the international regulations. And in doing so, Germany has, of course, also an own interest, which is to import safe food of high quality, because a lot of the products that developing countries are exporting, like be it fruits, vegetables, cocoa, coffee, are highly valued goods in our markets. It is also an interest to reduce interception at the entry points, because this is very cumbersome for both sides, to prevent globally the spread and of course also reduce the spread of pests and diseases when it comes to, of course, plants, animals, to enhance food safety worldwide, as well as trade and food security. And it is, of course, also to complement other technical support programs, initiatives, like the project that we at GIZ do. So coming from this general point, what is our involvement? So Germany is a donor to STDF, and the funds that Germany is providing are voluntary. You have seen there are some 10, 11 donors, and the money go to a general basket fund. And the German money comes from BMEL, who is the Ministry of Food and Agriculture in Germany, and from BMZ. And Germany is represented by the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, because this ministry is our focal point for SPS issues. But there is a very good collaboration between the two ministries, between the respective persons. And this is also why we as GIZ, Sector Project Agriculture, are allowed to advise and accompany the BMEL when it comes to STDF matters and when it comes to the meetings of the working group or the policy committees. So there is a written agreement that we as GIZ will advise the BMEL and may even sometimes speak for BMEL. So what are we doing? So there is a formal pathway how we as Germany contribute and get involved in STDF. So you saw this picture before. So the BMEL representative and we from the Sector Project Agriculture, at the moment it's me, we join the STDF working group meetings who take place twice a year. We get prepared for these meetings. We join the technical and strategic discussions about SPS issues and STDF matters. The working group oversees the work plan of the STDF Secretariat. We discuss and accept new projects there. So this is the project where you or your partners might be able to apply. These projects are pre-selected by the Secretariat, Pablo, for example, or Simon, and a list of projects with the project documents is then presented to the working group members, and the working group members discuss these projects, and in the end, the working group has to agree to fund these projects. It sounds complicated, but I, as a member of the working group, and I think also Pablo and Simon, are able to explain that everybody is really willing to bring the projects who are on the table to a good, to a good decision and to fund them. So these are very good decisions, and very often the proposed projects are in the end really approved. What else? The BMEL in Germany is currently the vice chair of the working group and will be the chair in the next year. We have been also involved in the policy committee, who works on more strategic decisions in the past. We do not have this role now because of the role as vice chair and chair. And yeah, this is the a little bit more formal part. Apart from that, I think there are a lot of avenues where you could also participate. So there are the practitioner group where experts come together and discuss more technically and thematically on different topics. So if there's a topic where you say, okay, I have knowledge, I have expertise, let us know, and there might be opportunity to get involved and get the exchange with other experts. You are, of course, free to promote and share information about STDF and its work, and also to use knowledge products and scale up innovations. And I think you will get all help and support from the Secretariat if you have questions on that. So what can you do very practically? I think Pablo and Simon explained very nicely that there's the grant option, so you can support your partners in the country to submit proposals to STDF. You can yourself try to integrate a STDF proposal complementary to your work in your work plan or project planning. In this case, you will go the normal way. You submit it to the STDF Secretariat. And as we, as GIZ in Germany, are involved in the voting process, we just would need to know that GIZ has been heavily involved in a certain proposal, because in this case, we would step back from the voting, which is not a disadvantage for you, but it would just be a conflict of interest. You can, of course, also think to integrate STDF expert in events on relevant topics such as trade, export promotion, food safety when it comes to speakers, panelists, or invite them to events just as observers or participants. You can use, as said, the knowledge products and participate in the practitioner groups. And just maybe as the last point, to give you some ideas for links, because when I talk to projects, I always had the experience that people find the topic of SPS very tricky. So many people worked on project with possible links, but yeah, they found it difficult to integrate the topic. So I think there are a lot of overlaps or possible synergies. So if you work in a value chain project, SPS might give you the opportunity to enhance market access or regional international trade. If you work on plant protection, animal health, there might be synergies when you have like a specific pest or a specific disease and you have ideas about innovative research or regional collaboration. Digitalization might be a possibility for links or even regional integration. And this is just a start of a list. So if you're interested in STDF, I think the STDF Secretariat, but also I are of course open to support you and to brainstorm ideas. It's also always very helpful for me to know if you are working in a country where SPS is relevant for you, or you're even doing something related to SPS, to give me a hands up. And because when we get the proposals for the working group in, I normally contact the relevant colleagues. So let me say there's a project tabled on the topic of cocoa in Cote d'Ivoire. I would search for our GIZ colleagues working on cocoa in Cote d'Ivoire and also check with them if the project is relevant for them, if they have been consulted or if they want to be consulted. And we sometimes had the cases that they found the project quite interesting and they said, okay, in the process of further developing the project or when it gets approved, let us somehow come in, and that worked out quite well. Yes. And with that, I would maybe stop here and hand back to you, Stefan.
Yes, thank you, Kathrin. Thank you very much for your slides. Thanks very much for explaining what the interest of Germany is, of BMZ, BMEL, GIZ, but what, for example, GIZ colleagues can also do to support partners to write a project proposal. All right, Pablo, Simon, and Kathrin, we still have around 30 minutes to go. And so far there are 2 questions in the chat, but please, ladies and gentlemen, do not hesitate to come with more questions. But let me start first with the question of our GIZ colleague Wilfried. Wilfried is asking, and maybe this question goes to Pablo and Simon, can you explain more about the cross-cutting SPS? Some examples will explain better. Thank you. Maybe Simon or Pablo, would you like to take over this question, please?
Sure, I can have a go at it, and then Simon can come in really quickly, because I know there was a first question there about the craft industry, leather craft industry, and just to note, normally we wouldn't view trade of leather goods as being an SPS issue per se, unless you can kind of prove that the export of leather may be, having some type of pest, but because leather is not, it's not an item that's kind of consumed, there's no real food safety issues. However, we have had projects in the past that deal in general with animal health. We had one, we had a project preparation grant in Afghanistan looking at export of livestock. Leather was introduced there. There was analysis of the export of leather, but it wasn't kind of the primary focus, just because leather usually, to my knowledge, there's not many SPS measures that you have to comply with in terms of leather. In terms of the cross-cutting SPS, it's a good question. These are general projects. I'm just thinking we just approved one on the e-ping system. This is kind of the transparency mechanism for notifying SPS measures to the WTO. This is a project that we're putting in that we just approved, and it's actually to upgrade the global system to help countries and stakeholders both notify draft SPS measures, but also to kind of better coordinate internally at the national level in order to provide comments on SPS measures of other countries. So this would be kind of an example of a, it's not in one of the specific food safety, animal or plant health areas. It kind of it's a much broader kind of concept. Simon, I know you had a project as well in Comoros that was dealing. Maybe you can describe that one as well.
Yeah, exactly. That was what I was going to bring as another example. Then is some work that we did in the region in Africa, in Comoros, and also in Togo. So in those countries, and it works more for those countries where there's very limited SPS capacity. We look at the whole SPS system, not only one specific sector, one specific commodity, but what we did in Comoros is an assessment of the whole SPS capacity of the country. Right? And so the project look at animal health, plant health, food safety. They apply the phytosanitary capacity evaluation tool, the PBS, performance of veterinary services tool, and also the food safety tool. They look at the laboratories situation. And then the result of this project in Comoros was the national SPS strategy of the country, right? Focusing on all sectors, focusing, of course, a little bit more on fisheries, because fisheries was one of the sectors that was identified as with potential. But the project focuses on the whole system. And the same happened in Togo. We developed a national strategy looking at all. And then in the end, the resulting project focused on fruits and vegetables in general. And it was food safety and plant health issues. So it's more something that is more, it doesn't focus on a specific sector and a specific commodity, but it's more SPS in general. This is what we call cross-cutting.
And Stefan, if I could answer the second question that's there, because it's true we didn't go into details of who actually applies, and it's a great question. So normally there's certain categories of applicants. It can either be a public sector institution, or it can be the private sector. However, we discourage applications from like individual companies. What we normally require is that like a producers association that represents many companies or many exporters put forth an idea. In any event, when you submit a project application, we normally require that it have letters of support. So if it is a private sector association, I'm just thinking the sesame exporters of Sudan, if they want to apply for a project, they would usually we would normally require that a letter of support be provided by, for instance, the Ministry of Agriculture, just so we know that both the public and private sector are aware of this and that they coordinate and collaborate on any initiative. So like I said, and so a lot of times we do receive applications from government institutions like the Ministry of Agriculture or the Food Safety Agency of a certain country, or it can be a producers association.
Maybe just to add, in terms of who is the beneficiary is the country, the developing country that it's applying for the grant. And it can be, as Pablo indicated, a government agency that is sending the application, or it can also be the private sector working together with the public sector. It is something that we also mentioned it in our presentation, that we always want to see this collaboration and dialogue that has taken place in the country before the proposal come to us. So that means, all these discussions, dialogue, and building a project proposal in the country with all the different stakeholders that will be involved in the implementation. And then we work with an implementing agency. So we identified, sometimes, most of the times, I would say that the application comes already with an implementing agency that has been identified. So during the elaboration of the proposal, for example, an example that comes to my mind now is that a proposal that we received from Senegal, and it was GIZ that helped supported Senegal with the development of the project proposal. So the proposal came to the STDF, and it was submitted by the National Plant Protection Organization of Senegal, because this project focuses on the phytosanitary capacity strengthening. But then this proposal came from this NPPO, the National Plant Protection Organization of Senegal, and the work that was done with the support from GIZ, the development of the proposal. So, of course, development partners, donors can be involved in this process of the development of the proposal. And once the proposal is approved, then there is one implementing agency that has already been identified before, or is identified later. And that's usually one agency that has a presence in the field, in the country. So we work with the FAO, we work with GIZ-colleague for implementation of projects. We work with different international or regional organizations that are in the field and that have that expertise, that SPS expertise to implement the project.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Simon, for answering this question very intensively. Thanks. I think the third question raised by Emmanuel, well, please kindly give a summary of the discussion. Emmanuel, I think we will not have a summary of the discussion, but we will record it right in this moment, and you can listen to the recording later on, step by step, and you get, of course, both presentations from Pablo, Simon, and Kathrin. So there will be not a summary of the discussion, but you can listen to all of it once again. You can go through the slides step by step, and I think this is even better than a summary. But the second part of the question, how someone in Nigeria can be beneficiary or participant. Maybe one of you wants to take this question, please.
Yep. Perhaps I can start just because, just to give an example of a project we recently approved for Nigeria. So generally what we require is, what we normally recommend is if you do have any type of an idea, that you contact us via email. And normally we can provide you with kind of a form to fill out, and it's just to provide information on the general concept before going through with filling out the entire application form. It's good just to contact us to see whether the concept is generally eligible, if it's of interest to us, and then we can provide some very fast and quick feedback on that. But just to give an example of Nigeria, The NEPC, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, contacted us. They had contacted us because they had some issues with exporting sesame and cowpeas, and they actually provided evidence in terms of showing that there were certain rejections occurring in certain markets, EU, US, and Japan primarily. And this is the type of stuff we'd like to see, is of evidence of SPS, having difficulties in complying with SPS measures. So in this case, it was linked to food safety issues with sesame, and then they got together and put together a proposal in order to try to rectify this issue and not have issues in terms of exporting.
Thanks very much, Pablo. And so far, there are no further questions in the chat, but there is a question from Eduard. And please, Eduard, I kindly ask you to open your camera and your microphone. Please feel free.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that Simon mentioned the case in Senegal, because this is something that we work on, and I think it's not really a question. It's just perhaps for the group, it could also make sense to have someone sharing the experience of directly working with the STDF, and also encouraging you to plan some potential activities to support countries to apply for funding with the STDF, like we have done in Senegal. So perhaps what we have done in Senegal is we initially, and when I say we are a global program, partnership for sustainable trade, and together with the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation, we implement ePhyto project, and we have done this in 8 countries so far, and we have still ongoing project in Mauritania and Ukraine. But we also have done this project in Senegal, in Togo, in Nigeria, and in other countries. And it came that the partner wanted to get some support to improve their phytosanitary capacities. And within the ePhyto project, we just put a bit of a budget aside so that we could work with a local consultant who could identify a project and develop a proposal. And this proposal was submitted to the STDF and approved. And so, I mean, with just putting a little bit of money from the ePhyto project aside to support this activity, I mean, it allows Senegal to then get, I think the budget was more or less 1 million, and to get support from the STDF to improve their phytosanitary capacity. So this is just an example of how the cooperation with the STDF can go. It has been very successful. I hope we will have the opportunity to do it in other projects. But this also for us, for GIZ, really opens a new door. So I think that's very important. And I just wanted to share this experience.
Thanks very much, Eduard. Thanks very much for sharing this experience with us. There is another question. I saw a hand, but the hand is gone now. Let me just see if there's more questions. Yes, there's one more question in the chat from Anderson Piri. Has there been deliberate efforts to see more private players to demand for the various STDF products / support, bearing in mind that public sector, which are policy drivers, has a lot of other national issues? Question mark. I don't know who wants to take over this question. Simon?
I mean, I can go ahead, and then Pablo can also say something about it. I mean, it's an interesting question, but it is true that most of the time in developing countries, the public sector SPS is not a real priority. You know, that's true. So and sometimes is the private sector that make some effort in terms of mobilizing and trying to at least raise awareness about the SPS issues. But I think the approach from the STDF is more about trying to always encourage that dialogue and collaboration. So if we heard from the private sector that there are some, they are being able to identify some specific SPS issues that they have, and that are problems for them to be able to export their products, our first suggestion would be to start that dialogue with the public sector, with the national authorities, because they should be the ones, of course, on board if there is a project proposal that will come to the STDF. And the same in the other way around. If it's the public sector that come to us with a specific issue, an idea, we always ask for the private sector to consult to the private sector, to involve the private sector, because in our experience, it really works well when you have both public and private sector working together. So the idea can come from each one, I mean, one or the other. It can be the public sector or the private sector bringing the idea, but we always encourage that communication, dialogue, collaboration, and working together, because as I said before, during implementation of the project, we want to see the both working together, the public and the private sector. And we have a lot of examples. In all the projects that we mentioned, is really working with both, with public and private sector together. But it is true that the idea can come from any of the both sides. I know, Pablo, you want to say something?
No, yeah. No, I think you answered that correctly. I think a lot of our projects, the actual kind of idea or impetus comes from the private sector oftentimes. Pressuring the public sector to try to find out figure out a solution. One that comes to mind is the Uganda Flour Exporters Association. They approached the government. They said, "Look, we're having too many rejections. We're going to go out of business if we don't fix this." So it was kind of like Simon said, it kind of goes hand in hand. So they both approached us because the issue was on both sides. It was both improving capacity on the private sector. But on the public sector, it was actually, having them be able to do proper inspections in order to catch some of these pests before they're exported, so that they don't arrive at the port of entry in wherever in Amsterdam, and then the whole consignment is rejected due to a quarantine pest. So that's just one example, but we do see it. If there's a deliberate effort from our side, not sure, but we're open, and like Simon said, we encourage PPP, public-private, that collaboration in order to apply for STDF funding. And if I could just add really quickly, because there was one example that came to mind as well, that if you do have, we know that we've funded projects in the past. There was one that we funded in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos on peppercorn. And through that project, a good practice peppercorn code of practice was developed. And we were happy to see that recently GIZ, through an EU GIZ project, will actually be using this code of practice. And these are the types of examples they'll be using that code of practice for a new project that will be implemented shortly in Cambodia. And this is a great example of kind of upscaling and using some of the knowledge products that are developed through our projects for other initiatives, other GIZ initiatives. So we really appreciate that type of collaboration and using some of the work that comes out of STDF's work as well.
Thanks, Pablo, and thanks, Simon. Let me just ask Kathrin, because now the two gentlemen were answering all the questions and commenting. Kathrin, do you have any additional remarks or comments? Or
No, I think they are the most competent authorities on STDF projects here. But just maybe to add, I remember from our last working group that you had also a consultancy done on public-private partnerships. So I think, I would also stress, and also from my experience in Ghana with SPS, that it is something that has to go hand in hand. I think it's an important point that Anderson made, but I think STDF is already working on that, and also to find out what makes this public-private partnerships in the SPS context successful or not so successful. Yeah. And I think that's also, and there are also some insights that are important for other fields. So it's, I don't know if it's published already, Simon and Pablo, but it's worthwhile looking into this work. Yeah.
Yeah, the guide hasn't been published yet, but it'll be coming out shortly, and that will provide kind of just a checklist of checklist of things to really implement a sustainable and strong PPP in the SPS area. So that will be coming out shortly.
Yeah, and maybe to add on the question before, I don't know if the question on who is beneficiary and who can implement and hand in is a question in the direction if a GIZ project can be a beneficiary. Well, the project maybe itself not, but of course there can be a STDF proposal can be complementary, as for example, also Eduard explained it, and you can of course work with your partners, be it the Plant Protection Agency or Food Safety Agency or I don't know, trade association. You can of course support your partners to hand in a proposal. You can maybe act as an implementer, but as far as I have seen, we do not have so many projects within GIZ who have the capacity themselves and the knowledge to work on SPS. So it might be interesting to you to have it as an add-on with an implementing agency, which is not GIZ. Yeah, but I think it's, if, for example, we have projects who could implement themselves, of course, it would be an option. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can just add really quickly too, I mean, one of the characteristics that we look for, when prioritizing the applications that come in for funding, if we receive something like an application where there's like a co-funding component, so for instance, GIZ is already funding something or is going to be funding something and can provide some co-funding in that sense, that's usually it's usually prioritized. So many of our projects, if they come in and say, look, GIZ is already going to provide 200,000, can you complement with another 600,000? That's a very positive thing, and it's usually viewed in the working group quite positively and is usually prioritized.
And I think it's worth speaking with partners about STDF, because we had several cases that I contacted GIZ projects and said, look, I think we had a case when it came to fisheries in, I don't know, an Asian country. And we found out that a very close partner of GIZ handed in and developed the project itself. And it was really complementary to the work that they were doing with the GIZ project, but there was no communication about it because maybe there was fear that GIZ would not approve it, and the project colleagues were of course very happy, and so you can please be open. It's not contradictory to have a GIZ project and to hand in a proposal to STDF. So it's better for you if you get into the discussion and maybe bring in your points and yeah, work together.
Thanks, Kathrin. Thanks, Kathrin, for this very important point, this very important remark, which might be useful for our colleagues who are now listening worldwide. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have still, if you want, 9 minutes to go until 4 p.m. Central European Time. I do not see any more questions in the chat. So I still give you the possibility to just raise your hand, to open your mic if you still have a question. But of course, if there's nothing more to ask, we do not have to extend this call if it's not necessary. Of course, all of you will get the contact details of Pablo, Simon, and Kathrin. And I think, as Pablo said it 5 or 10 minutes ago, if you might have a good project idea, it is worth maybe in the beginning send an email first, and then you get a response from Pablo, Simon, or one of their colleagues if this makes sense, or if you should continue develop this idea, or maybe if it's not so much the case. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I see no hands, I see no further questions, then I would, there's one example coming in from Susanne. Thank you for this, Susanne. Do you want to say something about this, Susanne, or is it just the hyperlink which the people can click on later on?
No, thanks a lot also from my side to Simon and Pablo. First of all, this is just what was explained by Edouard as the examples of implementation, and it's branded under the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation here, but it's a global GIZ program, which is now called Partnerships for Sustainable Trade that is implementing, and we are glad also to assist or to share our experience, as Edouard just mentioned. Thanks to everyone.
Thanks to you, Susanne. Thanks a lot. All right, then I think let's come to an end. Once again, thanks to our speakers, Pablo, Simon, and Kathrin. Thanks to the more than 46 participants who took part in this call, and all of you will get an email from me latest beginning of next week, I think, where you find the YouTube video of this expert talk and the presentations of Kathrin and the two gentlemen from STDF. Thanks a lot and have a nice afternoon. And in case there are any questions afterwards, do not hesitate to contact one of us for. All the best, and let's stay in touch. Bye-bye to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.